G'day humans, Chris Stead here. Today we're going to have a talk about why I've got some grave concerns about the upcoming Nintendo Switch 2 console and what I think Nintendo needs to announce at the April 2 Nintendo Direct to make this new console relevant. Let's go. Now, it's not something I really talk about that often on this channel, but I've been a games journalist for almost 30 years. In fact, that's where I got my start. And back in the day, I used to run some pretty major international magazines and websites. And so I spent a lot of time with Nintendo over those years. And I root for them. I really love Nintendo. Now, I have been involved with the launches of 6 consoles and 3 handhelds, not including all the spin-offs, of course, over that time. And I've been there with Nintendo behind the scenes more often than not for all the highs and all the lows because it's been a bumpy ride, So when I saw that Nintendo Switch 2 launch trailer, as basic as it was, I immediately saw some danger signs and some concerns were raised from what I experienced previously with Nintendo consoles. Because Nintendo tends to have this kind of wave effect where they have a really good console and a console that doesn't go too well, at least in recent times. And generally it ties into something that they've actually done that's kind of like special. So the N64 wasn't like a spectacularly successful console, like it was really solid. But it introduced 4-player split screen, 4 ports on a device for the first time, introduced an analog stick for the first time. It was really kind of where we saw 3D gaming really boom in the console space for the first time. And it was really backed up by some strong, titles, your Super Mario 64, GoldenEye, And I was working with Nintendo 64 Gamer Magazine at the time, so we were right in the thick of it. Then the GameCube came along, and it didn't really offer anything significant step ups. Like it was like the first Nintendo console that did discs, but that wasn't a big deal at the time, really. The PlayStation 2 was out; it was playing DVDs as well as PlayStation 2 games, and it didn't really set the world on fire as a result. It kind of felt it just didn't hit, But then the Wii came, and that was a big hit because it brought something new to the table. It was something we hadn't really seen before. I was at E3 seeing the crowd when me and Mato got on stage for the first time with and swung that Wiimote and played Wii tennis, and we were all sitting in the crowd going, "Whoa, really like this? Wow!" But then the Wii U came, and it didn't really offer anything spectacularly different other than the fact that you could now play Nintendo games in HD, which everyone else was already doing, and it flunked. And then we had the Switch, which turned things around altogether again. So here we are, and then off we run again. So Nintendo has this wave that has kind of run through with the consoles where it has this big success and builds this big audience, and then releases a console that doesn't do what the one before it did in terms of like just moving the needle on something significant. So I admittedly had some concerns when I saw that Nintendo Switch 2 announcement trailer. Straight away, it was not identifiable as a new product at a glance, and that was something that was a major issue for the Wii U as well. There was no real clear, this is a brand new console. It just looks like what the Switch OLED might look like, or the Switch Lite, just a new variant of the same thing. So that's an immediate concern for me. As I mentioned, there's no obvious killer difference, nothing that's been announced at this point anyway. It doesn't bring 4-player multiplayer to the world, or 3D to the world, or motion controls to the world, or the portable Switch 2 console experience to the world. What's the killer difference? I'm worried about the third-party support because I think because the Switch will have basically sold around 150 million units by the time the Switch 2 comes out. That's a huge audience that third parties, in the past, we saw it with the Wii and the Wii U, just aren't going to ditch that audience. Which means even if it's a super more powerful machine, the third parties will be making gains for the lowest common denominator, and that'll be for people who still have a Switch. So the third party support I don't think is going to be nearly as strong. At least that's a concern they're going to have to deal with. It's a mid-gen console. So there's a PlayStation 6 theoretically and an Xbox, a new Xbox theoretically, that are going to hit sometime in the next couple of years. So it's a mid-gen title in a way, console release in a way, and that's going to also create a barrier to entry for many people. We've got the PC handheld gaming space, which is a growing competitor in the scene. That's like there's plenty going on in that space, and they offer a really good gaming experience in a similar package to what the Switch offers. We also know that both Sony and Microsoft are working on handheld portables of their own to try and basically get in on a piece of the pie of what the Switch has done and the success the Switch has had. So there's going to be some serious competition in this space over the next 3 or 4 years between the PC gaming handhelds and what PlayStation and Microsoft are doing. And finally, the Switch itself is still doing all right. It's still going okay. You know, it's still trending up, it's still selling, we're still getting great games on it. So, you know, the market, all that stuff, I've seen it before, and it's pointing to a position or a situation where I have concerns, grave concerns about the Nintendo Switch 2. But we have a Nintendo Direct coming up on April 2, at which point Nintendo can come in and announce some key things that I think could make it much more of a likely success story. So we're going to dive into that now. So number one, as it stands, handheld gaming is still the big differentiator for the Switch and the Switch 2 compared to some of the other offerings in the market. So I think they really need to go hard on the screen and really make the screen stand out. Now, doing something like 4K or even 2K in this screen size, you know, in the screen size that it's reported to be, which is going to be closer to 8 inches, so a bit longer, a bit bigger than this, as you would have seen from the trailer. You know, it's probably overkill for this handheld size, but they can still go with OLED. They can still really get that brightness up and the contrast up and get that response time really, really tight. They can still aim for 120 Hertz. VRR, so variable refresh rate, I think would be a really meaningful and great addition, especially considering that it's looking at being backwards compatible. There's going to be some challenges there in terms of the games that go from Switch to Switch 2. We've got auto low latency that could be added. We've got HDR, and we also have Dolby Vision. So there's plenty that could be done to really make that screen experience when you're in handheld mode really pop. Number two, so obviously we want to see some power increase. Well, that's kind of a given. That's just the reality of the tech world. Things get better, but what are we going to get in here? What type of power do they need to hit? And I think that we need to see enough juice in this thing. I mean, a lot of people have asked for a docked 4K experience on the TV. I think in this day and age, that just has to be part of that, a big announcement that we get on April 2. It's April 2, by the way, in the USA, so it'll be April 3 here in Australia, for those of you who are wondering. But also, I think they really need to concentrate on making it very, very easy for third parties who are creating titles for PlayStation and for Xbox to be able to port their titles across. So we're talking about PS5 and Xbox Series X games, so like what we used to call next gen, current gen games, that can just be ported straight across to the Nintendo without any major issues or roadblocks there. Something that's got a chance of staying relevant if a PS6 rolls up in a couple of years from now. Something that potentially can be in the game when the biggest title of 2025 releases just after its launch, which is GTA 6. So when this comes out, rumored to be June, and then GTA 6 comes out a few months later, there's going to be a lot of interest in business around it. It's still in the launch window for the new console, and the biggest game kind of needs to be able to play on it, I think. So, but that's going to require a lot of power in a device, you know, that really isn't that big. So what are they going to do? How are they going to manage that? That's something that we're definitely going to have to get answered for us, and it has to be a significant step in that direction, in the right direction. 3, battery life. So, you know, the battery life can stretch up to at least, you know, up towards the 9-hour mark, you know, in a miracle situation with the OLED model of the Switch. And that's solid, but it definitely needs to keep improving, because if there's one thing that 2024 showed us, is that battery life is becoming a big centerpiece of the way that people are thinking in the market. Not only are we saying AI getting involved, NPUs getting involved, but also you've got the likes of what Apple's doing with the M4 chip, what the Snapdragon X Elite chip is doing, what Lunar Lake is doing with Intel. And then one of the big things that they've been able to do in other spaces, including the mobile space, is provide better performance without hammering the battery time. And so the Switch is going to also have to hit that mark somehow. We're going to have to see that achieved with the Switch 2. 4. Now, one of the things that was shown in the trailer was some reasonably significant changes to the Joy-Con experience, but Nintendo needs to come out at the Nintendo Direct, I believe, and really focus in on the analog stick experience. So we're talking about like something that's greatly improved, like Hall effects style or similar sort of, bespoke painted Nintendo tech, but something that really gets away from this design on the original Switch was a bit of a shocker. And geez, stick drift has just been an issue in Nintendo from the N64 days, and it continues to be. So that's somewhere that I'd really like to see an improvement. There are rumors about this doubling as a mouse, but realistically, why can't we just connect a Bluetooth mouse? I don't think that's a big deal. Just get those sticks working perfectly right, and show everyone on Nintendo Direct that there's going to be a significant step up in the controller experience that comes in that handheld mode. 5, make sure you keep the barrier to entry on this low. And I'm going to talk about price in a second, because price is obviously one of the big things that's going to have to be spoken about in Nintendo Direct. But there's other ways they can lower the cost of the barrier cost to get in on the Nintendo Switch 2. By which I mean enabling. Look, they're obviously going to have some games backwards compatible. Most of the games, it sounds like, from the way they've worded, you'd suspect 90% of the games are going to work on the Nintendo Switch 2. But what about some of the peripherals? What about the existing Pro controllers? How are these going to work? What about the existing dock that you might have? Is there any way that you can have 2 docks set up and it will work with the existing docks? People already have invested quite a bit in the Switch ecosystem, and there's 150 million of them roughly. So making sure that as much of those accessories and peripherals can carry across to the Switch 2 just lowers the barrier of entry for people and allows people to, for example, be able to play multiplayer split screen games in the docked mode straight out of the bat, because they've already got controllers that will do the job. And I think, especially in this cost of living crisis, Nintendo really needs to make some announcements there to just ease that pain barrier and try to get more people to move from the Switch to the Switch 2, because if they don't, it's going to be an issue for games. So number 6 is games. And this is a really, really big one. Now, I've seen this a lot of times over the years across various console generations. Even if there's a console that isn't necessarily the best console, for example, Xbox 360 wasn't technically a better console than the PlayStation 3, but it got the games. And it got the games because it had the install base. And you need that install base to be able to basically justify third-party developers investing money in that platform, because if there isn't an install base there, then they're not going to get their return on the investment, so they don't do it. This is why consoles like the Wii U and the GameCube just basically died out, because people were like, you haven't sold enough of them, so it's not worth us making games for you. And then you're relying super hard on, first-party games. So games is a big one. Now, we saw in the trailer what appeared to be Mario Kart 9, definitely a great launch window title, whether that's on launch day or sometime in the first 3 months or so, or definitely in 2025 anyway. Mario Kart 9, big title to bring out, gonna move some units. Definitely great, especially if it's got some added gameplay experiences to it that people aren't already enjoying in Mario Kart 8, which Nintendo does definitely blur the lines there a lot, with a lot of reused material in its Mario Kart games. But hopefully Mario Kart 9 offers something super fresh. That's definitely one for sure. Now, a date for Metroid Prime 4 obviously is something that we all want to see, so you'd think that's going to come out in Nintendo Direct as well. Again, if that's a 2025 release, that would be significant. But Metroid as a series doesn't really move the needle as much as super hardcore Metroid fans like me wish it would. What they really need to do is look at some of the titles that have been a few years between drinks and get some of those announced for Switch 2 to get that buy-in and get that install base up. And for me, that's a new Super Smash Brothers. So it's been 7 years since the last one. So it's totally due. Huge hit on the Switch, big audience going to come across. Animal Crossing could potentially be another one. It's still much loved and much played, but the New Horizon, but it will have been 5 years, more or less. So there is room for something there as well. Zelda's kind of blown its wad. Like, we've got plenty of Zelda experiences on the Switch. I don't think that's potentially going to move the needle as much when people are still trying to finish Tears of the Kingdom and Echoes of Wisdom. And there's great games that have been coming out for it. But yeah, so pulling out a couple of those key titles, I think, and just getting them live, I think will be key. I think Donkey Kong is definitely a franchise they could potentially lean on with this launch. I'd love to see a brand new proper 3D Donkey Kong experience be announced. Donkey Kong has got a rebirth in popularity thanks to the film success. which was obviously huge. And Nintendo's kind of, they just released the Donkey Kong Country HD version. We've seen Tropical Freeze HD re-release. That's kind of indicative of the way Nintendo baits people back into the franchise, gets a bit of flow of income coming in before they then, you know, here we go, there's a big new game coming out. So hopefully we see that. I'd like to see a Pokemon Legends Z2A announced for Switch 2 as well. It's another place where I think they could make some waves. Obviously Pokemon, huge franchise. There's something there that they can do for the round of Switch 2. That would also, I think, be a big win. What can they do with some third parties? So what third parties can get involved? Like I mentioned before, GTA 6, I personally think it's unlikely, but just imagine if they said, oh, and GTA 6 is coming out in a few months, it's gonna work on a Switch 2. Like that would have a huge positive impact on the way that people are thinking about, do I need to upgrade to this console? Is it gonna do something for me? So being able to just kind of have that kind of caliber where you know that kind of title, and that would mean like potentially the next Call of Duties and Assassin's Creeds and FIFAs and all those are going to come across as well. That would be a huge win, I think. Potentially they could do something, obviously that I suspect that a few Japanese-based third parties would probably get involved. We might see something from Square, maybe a Kingdom Hearts announcement or something like that. But the interesting one could be Microsoft, because Microsoft has indicated that there's an interest in releasing more of its IP and product on rival consoles. And it would be very, very interesting if they announced a major Microsoft game was coming to the Switch, even if it was a timed exclusive, but announcing at the Switch 2 launch, something like a new Halo or something of that ilk would definitely make waves. But I think potentially more likely could be that new Perfect Dark game. So that I think could be a smoky as an announcement. But either way, they're going to have to come to the party at the Nintendo Direct with such a significant, overwhelming amount of big name franchise games that consumers are like, yes, I'm upgrading. I'm upgrading to the Switch 2. Because as I mentioned, I think unless there's a buy-in, a massive momentum behind the Switch 2, I think what will happen is that a lot of the third parties will just keep making their games at the lowest common denominator for their audience, which will be Switch level quality, not Switch 2 level quality. Because I'll be like, I can still make this game for Switch and sell up to 150 million people on it, and it's still going to work on a Switch 2 for the couple of million who bought it at launch, right? So I hope that makes sense, but I've seen it so many times over many console generation launches, and that's what Nintendo needs. So I hope that's what they have in that announcement at the Nintendo Direct. So number 7, I'd just like to see at that Nintendo Direct, Nintendo confirm that they're bringing the Nintendo Switch 2 up to just all the modern standards. So I'm talking Bluetooth 5.4, I'm talking Wi-Fi 7, I'm talking HDMI 2.1, I'm talking Dolby Atmos support. I'd like to see better motion sensing, so some sort of improvement there, maybe even some sort of detection in the dock, but just something to improve any of the motion sensing so it's a much more accurate experience. That would definitely be something that would be good. And improvements with the internal storage, so whether that's more capacity, faster drives, being able to take more capacity in SD cards, just an improvement in that storage situation, because if they do increase the power, which we're suspecting, and they can run bigger games at higher spec, then that is going to require more storage space as well. 8 is app support. It just needs to have better app support. So like I said at the start, we've got these PC gaming handhelds which are now making an impression in the video gaming space. We've got Sony and Microsoft reportedly working on new handheld devices as well. If the Switch 2 comes out and it can't do things like play Netflix or Disney or kind of the stock standard apps that most other electronic devices, including your phone, can just play nowadays, and it's really kind of just nerfing itself for no particular reason. It can't be that hard. You might as well give users the flexibility of knowing if they pick up the Switch 2, they're going to get the gaming experience that they want, but they're also going to have the flexibility to be able to use that to do other multimedia experiences that we're really into. So hopefully we see something announced there. Number 9 is price. Now obviously it's going to be critical. Surely they're going to announce it on April 2. Where's it going to sit? And despite the fact that I've kind of just listed all these improvements that I think that the Switch 2 needs to have to at least show some relevance, considering that as a form factor, it looks so similar to what we've already got. And as a game library, it's going to play pretty much what we've already got. That price point really should be where it is now. So the Switch OLED models retails in Australia for $539. Obviously it'll be different whatever country you are, but you know, the exchange will be roughly the same. And they really, and as in a comparison, the PS5 Slim you can pick up here for $679. So there's about $140 difference between the base PlayStation 5 and that's a digital edition, and the Switch OLED. So really, it definitely needs to come under $600 here in Australia, and the closer to $500 it can get, especially in a cost of living crisis, the more chance it has of having that initial big buy-in, which the console desperately needs. And let's be honest, Nintendo's just made an absolute squillion out of the success of the Switch, the success of the movie, and doubling down on so many remakes that's unbelievable and still making money off them, that they should just take a hit on the console just to make sure that they get a significant initial buy-in so I can stir the rest of the market into coming on board. And number 10, Nintendo at the Direct on April 2, you just have to announce something different. Something about this Nintendo Switch 2 console which sets it apart from everything else. Having a bigger screen, it's not good enough. Being 4K, it's not good enough. Iterating on the stand and iterating on the Joy-Cons, it's not good enough. It's not enough to make the significant number of people that you need, not just the hardcore fans which have already bought it, don't care what you say, all the people that are going to create that massive volume of support for the console that's going to stir all the third parties and everyone into getting on board. You're going to have some sort of announcement that sets it apart from what we're already playing and existing, because the GameCube didn't. It just said, we do discs now. And the Wii U didn't. It just said, we've got HD now. And they flunked. So, what is it, Nintendo? What is it? So anyway, that's pretty much my reaction to seeing the Nintendo Switch 2 announcement trailer. And obviously I've been following it every single leak, every single rumor. I write about it all the time in the magazines that I do. And I just thought I want to shoot this video and just kind of offer some more thought and add my perspective to the mix. Be very interested to hear what your thoughts are and your perspective is, so please do jump in the comments. Keep it civil. I know it's the gaming world. No one's ever civil in the gaming world, but you can do your best and we'll have a chat about it. I'd love to know what everyone else thinks. Look, still super excited. Like I said at the top, love Nintendo. I've been playing their console since the NES. And I have so many fond memories and great experiences that I've had with their consoles. I thought the Switch was fantastic and I still play it all the time. So I am hoping that the Switch 2 knocks it out of the park. But as I've detailed in depth in this video, I think there's quite a few things that need to happen to actually move the needle for the general masses on this product. So let's see what happens on April 2. Make sure you keep an eye on the channel, because I'm sure I'll have some sort of reaction on that date as well. All right, I'm Chris Stead. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I'll check you later. You!